What does a senior associate in competition law, or rather in your department, do? What does your job entail?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So the area of our law is it's a very niche area of law. So it's I suppose it's a broader part of corporate at our law firm. But competition, if I would say my daily job, and I think what we're lucky with, especially as juniors, is that we don't get to sort of subspecialize in a particular field. You know, I think as a partner, you sort of find your niche in a niche, right? So if I would say the kind of work that we do, I think our bread and butter at work is definitely mergers and acquisitions. So two companies coming together and saying we want to transact. And if those companies meet certain financial thresholds, they will be required to notify a merger, right? So I think if people sort of follow like trends about businesses and companies coming together and merging, you'll often see our authority is called the Competition Commission, and they are the investigative arm of the kind of work that we do. So in a merger investigation, they will investigate the merger. But it's not just, we don't just do mergers and acquisitions. It's a large part of our work, but it's not the only part of our work. And I think one thing that I truly love about the law firm that I work in is that we don't just do South African mergers.
Okay.
We do African mergers as well. So if I'm sitting here right now, I can tell you I've done mergers in most African countries, right? And that is such an interesting perspective because it shows you how different regulators deal with sort of similar but different issues, right? So I think that's why I love sort of working at a big law firm, because you get exposure not just to South African law, but by getting exposure to, for example, African mergers, merger in Tanzania, merger in Zanzibar, a merger in Botswana, you get to experience those laws as well. Obviously, you work with local councils in those countries, but at the foundation, you are the one drafting the merger. So we also do things like abuse of dominance. Abuse of dominance, if I want to like explain it in a very easy way for people to be able to understand it, right? So in a market, you'll often find sometimes that you'll have a dominant firm. A dominant firm is a big player in a market. So for example, if I were to let's use cameras for example. Sony, Canon, and the other big players are often have a large market share, right? So a player that has, for example, let's say Sony has 45% market share, they would be considered to be dominant, right? And certain practices that are done by dominant firms are considered to be an abuse, right? And let me make an example. So in COVID time, remember what would happen is that a lot of people were needing masks, right? And certain firms, there were not a lot of firms that were providing masks. So let's say you Yvonne, starts a firm and you are the only producer of firms of masks in South Africa. What would happen is that you would be considered to be dominant. And if you decide, actually, I'm realizing that thousands of South Africans are looking for masks, I can actually charge a mask for 5,000 Rand. That is an abuse of your dominance, because you realize that the profit margin is not 5,000 Rand. You can actually make a profit from selling a mask for 10 Rand. But you're abusing that dominance because why? It's because you know that there's no other suppliers that customers can go to. So it's a complicated area of law, niche. But one thing I love about competition is that I still believe that it is a very new area of law. The Competition Act is 25 years old.
Okay.
So I always sort of encourage people to look at areas of laws that are still emerging, because then you start sort of becoming the thought leaders in those areas, in those spaces. So yeah, that's sort of the kind of work that we do.